Okay, we should be good. Should be live. How's it going? Hello. Let me announce to the Discord. I always forget that I want to include the link. What? I just noticed the inconsistent capitalization scheme in my title. Oh well. It happens. What's up? What's up? What is up? Hello, Misa. Good morning, Chris. I'm actually thinking about changing it to changing the stream to a little bit later. I'm gonna poll the Wait, I don't have do I not have Hey MF, or do I not have the emotes set up correctly? Cuz I'm not seeing that on my chat. Yeah, I'm not seeing it on my screen thing either. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I was gonna poll and see if it would be better for people if I started like 2 hours later, because I feel like that might actually be better for me. Better, not better Twitch TV, 7 TV emotes, etc. in screen chat. How's it going, Green? It's good to see you. Are there any video games yet? This is a video game. I didn't play this for a couple weeks, but I've got maybe... I feel like I've got to be approaching like 50 hours played in this game. This is... And then last night I played and recorded it, and apparently went for like 2 hours. Yeah. I mean, I have my complaints about it, but, you know, for the Angel Game fans, for the Post Void fans, etc., this is a banger for sure. What other video games? I don't know. That's about it. There aren't very many video games. Yeah, what else have I been playing? I'm still playing the Theta puzzle game. Let me see if I can pull it up again. The more I play this game, the more confused I am about like how I feel about it. You know, it's like a puzzle game where you have multiple characters, like clones of yourself, and you know, you're controlling them at the same time, but like there are certain rules that make it so that they do different things depending on how you move and like where they are when you do certain inputs. And then it gets, you know, you have to do like Sokobanish things, and you have to do like, but like it gets weird. Like, yeah, I won't spoil too much, but like, you know, that might give you an idea right there of like the type of direction that it goes. But it feels very like, my problem with this game is very much the good things about this game and the bad things about this game for me are very similar to Baba Is You. Like, it just has so many ideas in it and it just keeps going in a way that is like crazy. And it's, you know, I just always love to see that type of thing, right? Like, I love to be playing a game where like I literally have no idea how it's going to keep going for another like 3 chapters. Like, how is it that all this crazy stuff has already happened and there's still like half the game left or whatever? And it just keeps going and keeps going, like, you know, kind of like Steven's sausage roll, but like more insane and a little bit less elegant. But yeah, so that's what I like about the game, is that it's just kind of crazy and it keeps going like that. But similar to Baba Is You, it just has too many puzzles. Like, every new mechanic that's introduced, I mean, a few of the mechanics you kind of wonder, like, did this really need to be there? But like every mechanic that's introduced, even the major mechanics, like there's just like at least like 20. Like, they introduce like ice, right? They introduce like ice physics, which is like not even that interesting, like, because of the ice itself. It's like interesting because of how it affects how it interacts with the main like mechanics of the game, right? But they still do like 30 levels of like exploring all the possibilities with the ice, right? Like, you better be damn sure that you understand ice by the time that chapter's over. And like, and then there's like, you know, there's like bonus puzzles. There's like that's like just the main sequence, which, I mean, you can like skip some of that. You probably could, you know, curate an experience for yourself with the game that's like, you know, I'm gonna play like half. I'm gonna skip every other level, but that feels kind of weird. Like, you're messing up the sequencing and like yeah. But anyway, yeah, there's too many levels, and like the difficulty is pretty consistently high. Like, even in the main levels, especially at this point, like early on, some of the levels were like too easy, but you know, you very quickly get to a point where like even the main sequence puzzles are pretty hard. But I would prefer if they were hard in a slightly different way. Like, when you get to the optional, the super optional puzzles, they're often hard in a different way, where like there are several things to figure out within one puzzle. Like, there are several big ideas within the puzzle, and you can kind of figure them out in different orders. And so the puzzle kind of has a sense of scale to it, because there's so many different things you have to figure out. It's not just looking for the one trick. Like, I think this is kind of unique to this game. Like, I think this is something that I feel about this game more than other puzzle games. Like, a lot of puzzle games, it can kind of work, I think, if you just have one idea per puzzle. And yeah, but because this game has like so many different things that you can do, so many different ways to potentially approach a puzzle. Like, when you look at a puzzle, it doesn't really narrow down the looking at the level design, it's not very easy to like deduce your way to like a really simple problem. It's kind of like there's a lot of possibilities when you look at a level. Like, yeah, like in Snakebird, just looking at the level, because there's gravity, which narrows down the possibility space a lot, and because, you know, the different snake orientations mean a lot about what you can do. Like, it's easy. It's a lot easier in something like Snakebird to look at the level and narrow down to like a pretty simple problem where you can it's very crisp in your head. Like, okay, the problem in this level is I have to get over here, but I can't do it this way and I can't do it this way. So how is this possible, right? I have to figure out some new thing. Like, it very quickly reduces to a simple problem through simple like deductions and understanding the mechanics. This game is not really like that as much. Like, it is kind of hard to think about, and like the mechanics are really interesting, but there's so many mechanics by this point in the game that every puzzle is a little bit of a task just to get to the point where you crisply, clearly understand the problem. And so, yeah, for that reason, I think it would be a lot better for this game in particular, even more so than most games. It would be better for it to have fewer puzzles that are, yeah, more involved, so that you're spending, you're doing that you're doing that part of the loop less often, the part where you're looking at the new puzzle and trying to get to the point where you even clearly understand what the problem is, rather than just because like yeah, when you get into a new puzzle, you're very often like, okay, there's like 5 completely different ways I could approach this, and like they all I have to figure out which ones are like clearly not possible. There's just a lot, yeah, there's just a lot of like work, it feels like, to get to that point in a puzzle. Anyway, yeah, so I kind of wish more of the game felt like the optional stuff, which would alienate a lot of people because it is really hard. but yeah, I find it hard in a less exhausting way because there's just more things that you can figure out at any given time. If yeah, there's this is kind of a weird thing about puzzle games and how most people feel about them. I didn't expect to rant about this game for that long, but it is interesting. Like most people in a puzzle game, I kind of wrote about this when I wrote about Sneckbird in my 2025 post, but like most people when they're playing a puzzle game, they don't want a puzzle that has like a lot of different things that you have to figure out, and you have to like figure out all 5 of these big ideas and how to fit them together in order to solve the puzzle. Most people don't really want that because, well, for multiple reasons, but one big reason is that I'm getting distracted by my caramel action gameplay. It doesn't feel like they're making progress, right? Like they might figure out 2 out of the 5 big ideas and then feel kind of stuck for a while and feel like they just haven't made any progress in the last 30 minutes, even though they've actually figured out multiple like relevant things that they need to figure out, but it's just not clear to them that like those things are relevant. It's not like 100% because it's not 100% certain whether they actually needed to figure out those things, whether those things are actually going to be helpful for the ultimate solution. Like, yeah, they feel kind of like frustrated by the lack of progress. The game is not 100% confirming for them that they are making progress, even though they are. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's, yeah, I think just it's interesting. Just like with more experience with puzzle games, you get to a point where you understand that you are making progress just by exploring the possibilities in your head and like narrowing things down, and yeah, just by thinking about the level and loading it into your head more, and yeah, thinking more deeply about the level in different ways that you haven't yet. Like that is making progress in a puzzle. Yeah. So this game is interesting, but I have kind of mixed feelings about it. Oh, Misa, thanks for the gifts. Damn, everyone getting gifted. What else have I missed while I was reading, or while I was ranting? Not reading. Do I think if a puzzle game introduces a mechanic that it should make an effort to exhaust its possibilities? Not really. Like, and this is something that I think Jonathan Blow has talked about a lot, and I remember him talking about it in the Braid commentary. Like, you know, some game designers, especially puzzle game designers, they'll think about every mechanic that, you know, they'll either literally make this, or they'll think about it this way. They'll make like a 2D grid of like, you know, every mechanic. You know, there's a list on the vertical. Every row in this grid is a mechanic, and every column is also, you know, like a mechanic. It's like all the mechanics on every row and all the mechanics in every column, and then like you make sure that every possible combination of 2 mechanics shows up together at some point in the game, so that you make sure that every possible interaction is explored somewhere. And, you know, that's a way to like make sure that you are thoroughly, like, you're exploring the possibilities of your game thoroughly enough. I think Jonathan said something to this effect, and this is, at least in any case, this is how I feel. Some of the possibilities just aren't going to be that interesting. Or like, you know, sometimes you have a mechanic that exists specifically to bring more out of like one particular other mechanic, or like, I mean, ideally that's not the case because that's kind of inelegant or something, but yeah, not every mechanic has to interact with every other mechanic in a super interesting way. And if it's not interesting, don't put it in the game. Like, yeah, that's how I feel about it. To explore every interesting possibility and find the way. What I was saying with the Theta game in particular is find the way to explore all those possibilities that is the most fun, you know, and requires the least like work type of effort, you know, because it really does feel like the beginning part of puzzles of of a lot of the puzzles in this game, at least at this point late in the game. The beginning part of the puzzles often feels like work. And so having just fewer puzzles would make the game overall feel a lot less like work, I think. It's also just amazing, like, you know, it's motivating and exciting when you enter one of the more complicated puzzles in this game. This is for me, you know, your mileage may vary quite a bit. But when I look at these puzzles I'm like, okay, this is clearly not possible for like 4 reasons. Like, that's exciting to me. That's motivating. I want to think about it then. Whereas when it's like, okay, I can see how this is like almost possible in like 3 different ways, but like they're 3 totally different ways, and I kind of have to explore them and like really think about them separately to figure out which one it's gonna be. That's really not motivating. Like, it feels like I kind of already understand the puzzle, maybe, and I'm not even sure immediately when I look at the puzzle that the puzzle has something new to show me or to teach me. And maybe eventually, once I explore all of those, like the three different approaches, maybe, you know, and this is the case in this game. Oftentimes, after I have explored the possibilities for a little while, it becomes clear that, okay, there actually is something new here. I really don't understand something, but it just took so long to get to that point that like a lot of the playtime was spent in this state where I wasn't that motivated, you know? Yeah, it's complicated. It's really complicated. But yeah, there's lots of reasons why I think why I prefer that kind of puzzle personally, the more complicated multi-realization kind of puzzle. But for this game in particular, there's a lot of reasons. How's it going, Gosu? I do see the YouTube chat. Thank you for testing. How's it going, Lohin? Yeah, the Matthew Van Devender I kind of watched. I don't really feel like I got that much out of that new lecture from him, to be honest. I'm trying to think of a nicer way to say it, but I think we can be honest and say that Matthew Van Devender's work, both the lectures and the game, are kind of like Jonathan Blow's reheated nachos. Like, I enjoyed Taiji a lot. I really enjoyed Taiji, but I enjoyed it in a way that was like, yeah, you know, this is The Witness again. This is more of that, and you know, that's hard to design, and that doesn't come along very often, and all of these things. So like, you know, I appreciate it. And his lectures, I'm sure his lectures are at least reminding people of, you know, reminding puzzle designers and people who were like thinking about puzzle design, like reminding them of things that are interesting and important about puzzle design. If not, and at least to some degree, they're not just reminding, but also like, you know, introducing new people to these ideas, right? But I do feel like the most important and valuable contributions or things that he's saying and it kind of all came from Jonathan Blow lectures from a long time ago. So for me it's not that exciting. And yeah, sometimes he has a little bit more of a tendency than Jonathan Blow to like let his very specific, his very personal tastes into his more general objective like lectures, right? Like when he's making a point that's very general and he's trying to, yeah, like you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying if you've watched this stuff. More often than not, people's complaint is that games have too many puzzles. Really? I'm not really sure how most people feel about this. Certainly, I usually feel that games have too many puzzles, but like when you look at like Steam store pages, the number of puzzles is very often a talking point, or is very often a selling point. Let's go back to some actual gameplay. You know, you very often see like as a selling point 600 puzzles, you know, 300 plus puzzles. I've talked about this before. Like, yeah, like Monsters Expedition, I believe, did this, like however many puzzles. Although I think Monsters Expedition, the store page says something like however many puzzles, each containing a genuinely new idea or whatever. And I'm like, is that how true is that really? I mean, you know, the bar for a new idea, like technically a new idea is kind of low. Really, what I'm hoping for in a game is like a big new idea, or, you know, it just needs to be enough. It just needs to be enough to be worth the time spent on that puzzle. This level is so fire, man. Like the fact that the ghosts are out the whole time is just so crazy. This is the very last level, by the way, of the so this is Caramel Action Micro. If you haven't been here the previous streams that I have been talking about this, because I've been playing this on and off for several weeks now. This is Caramel Action Micro, and the structure of the game is like arcade, you know, kind of cave, or like other arcade games inspired, where there's loops. So you could think of like the normal, like beating the game as just beating the first loop, and it's 7 levels and it's only like 3 minutes long or something. But then the game starts back over from the beginning and everything is way harder, like way harder. Like if you played Dodonpachi or a Saikyo game, or I don't know about Gradius. I know Gradius has loops, but I don't know exactly how it works or how much harder it is on the second loop versus the first loop or whatever. I assume it's quite a bit harder. Anyway, it's all the same levels again, but quite a bit harder. Like more enemy spawns, fast, everything's moving faster, etc. And yeah, so this is level 2-7, so it's the last level of the second loop. And yeah, these ghosts that spawn from the corners, they they insta-kill you if they touch you, right? And they just like move through obstacles and everything, and you have to kind of like constantly be thinking about how you're moving, you know, changing the minutia of your movement can like affect, you know, make them move just the right way so that you can barely squeeze your way around them. And like this level is just so mean, the way that it combines the ghosts being up from the very beginning. Like normally the ghosts only appear after you kill a certain number of enemies within the level, or something like that. It's a little more complicated than that. There's actually a trick to it, but you have a little bit of control over when the ghosts spawn. But yeah, the fact that the ghosts are spawning from the corners from the very beginning, and this level is very like tight. It has these very tight spaces where you like have to get into this little corner to get this one bomb, and then the ghosts are like obviously going to get to that little corner with you and start messing all your routing up, and like, you know, make it really hard to get out of there cleanly. Like, yeah, it's very mean, but I like it a lot. But yeah, I'm just so close. I haven't been playing the game quite as regularly for the past couple weeks, but I'm extremely close to getting the 2-all, which no one has gotten yet, as far as I'm aware. But I've also heard that there is a third loop, which I mean, I assume it's just supposed to be, it's not really supposed to be fair. It's not really supposed to be, because this is just already so hard. Like, I played like 50 hours of the game, and I'm just now at the point where I feel like I can definitely finish the second loop. Maybe you get a new set of bombs or something though for the third loop. Maybe that would make it, but I seriously doubt that's the case. Anyway. Am I named after that guy in Silence of the Lambs? I don't know when that movie came out. I feel like it kind of came out like a little after I was born. I was born in 1993. So, yes, I am old. I guess it wasn't originally a movie though. Was that character original in the movie? The character was probably originally in the books, right? So, but yeah, I don't think I don't think I was named after. My parents don't know how to read. There's no way I was named after that. Okay. Let's chill on caramel action. I appreciate the questions, Green. Have you been coming up with these while you've been under your rock? You've been writing down all these questions to ask me when you get back? Is game content that nobody ever gets to good game design? I'm kind of going to talk about this a little bit with Resident Evil Requiem, actually. But I think my answer is it can be. Reading bad the witness criticism? Where have you found that? Anyway, if anyone else has other news type of stuff to talk about, feel free to link things or whatever, or ask questions about what I thought about this and that. But I thought this was interesting in a, in a sad way. Well, it's complicated, right? So anyone who was around in like 2019 remembers the Epic Game Store, kind of the start of the Epic Game Store, right? Trying to compete with Steam. And I think people were too hard on Epic. A little bit. It does. I get the sense. I mean, this is just a soul read, right? But I get the sense that Tim Sweeney's heart is at least somewhat in the right place. Like, you just would do different things. Like, it's not that the things that he's doing, like, suing Apple and Google and like competing with, trying to get the Epic Game Store like to be a serious Steam competitor and all the stuff like that. Like, those things obviously are valuable to his business. They're obviously valuable to Epic's growth, at least theoretically, right? Like they're not contrary to Epic's growth, but they're also not the things. They're not the low-hanging fruit. They're not the obvious easy things. They're not the easy wins. They're not the stuff that most companies would do, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence that both of them have positive externalities, especially if they actually work, they actually have a positive impact on the consumer, right? Because the whole thing with Epic Game Store is that he wanted to give all developers an 88, I think, % cut of their game profits and only take a 12% cut as the store, right? Which is great. Like that would at least, I mean, obviously for developers that would be amazing. And then the thing with, similar thing with like the Apple lawsuit and everything. Like, I don't know all the details of that, but they, he wanted to make it, he wanted to push back a little bit on Apple charging a 30% fee on everything in their store, and their app store, even though they like do very little. Like, Steam. Here's what kind of annoyed people. I think I didn't really hear much discussion about this, but here's what was annoying about the Epic Game Store, more so than the Apple thing. Like, what was annoying about the Epic Game Store is that Valve kind of does earn their cut, right? Like, Valve charges a 30% cut. Like, that Valve takes a 30% cut of everything that's on Steam, which is a lot. But they also like do a kind of amazing job. Like if you try to imagine any other company in charge of Steam, it's pretty hard to imagine that they would do as much as Valve does. And like, you know, like here you can see what they've been doing for the platform just recently, like in 2025, right? Like they're doing all this hardware stuff, like, you know, this isn't quite like directly making the platform better, you could argue, but like, you know, it's giving you more ways to play games on Steam. Like the fact that you can have a Steam Deck and or like a, you know, a Steam machine, whatever you can stream games to play on your TV, you know, it's giving you more ways to use the platform. And like this development does actually help, obviously. And then like having good VR stuff on the platform obviously is good. But, you know, even people don't realize like how much stuff they're doing for the store to have like different types of discoverability, like different ways to find games on the store that are actually games that you actually want to play. Like a lot of people don't look past the front page, but well, I mean, first of all, they are making the front page better constantly, but like, you know, there's the, I forget what the interactive recommender, there's the interactive recommender on Steam, you know, there's the discover queue or whatever. I don't really use the discover queue. I don't use most of this at this point because I have kind of a set group of people who recommend games to me and like sources that I find the games that are really interesting to me. But like I have used them before and I think they're very useful for a lot of people. And they're constantly making good changes to these things. Like they're just constantly working on making the store better. And I think it actually has gotten a lot better. If you look back 10 years ago, 5 years ago, like I think it has gotten a lot better. And, you know, they're constantly doing these sales and stuff. Whatever. Like they're constantly putting a ton of work into Steam in a ton of different like areas of the platform. And, you know, you can't imagine that most companies would do that. And like Apple on their app store is just obviously not doing that to the same degree. And yet Steam lets you go anywhere else to, I mean, it's different because Steam doesn't own, you know, Valve doesn't own Windows, whereas Apple owns iOS. But anyway, you can see why people were a little more annoyed at like trying to compete with Steam, because Steam is kind of awesome. Like Steam is kind of a great platform, and like always getting better. But you know, it's probably still a good thing that Epic tried to compete with Steam. You know, they've obviously failed at this point, which is what I'm kind of saying here. They've obviously, or at least they've experienced a major setback, and they're not going to be competing with Steam anytime soon in a serious way. But like, yeah, it might have had a positive impact. You know, it might have kind of lit a fire under Valve to work harder on securing their monopoly, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, yeah, I think people gave Epic too much of a hard time back then. I think it's cool that they are trying to do these crazy things that actually do help the industry. But sadly, it kind of seems like none of that has come to very much. Like they managed to change some laws in Europe about, you know, Apple. I think Apple has to allow other stores on the platform in Europe, but not in the US now. Some stuff has changed very slightly about, I don't even know exactly. Some stuff has changed very slightly with Apple, but it doesn't really seem like they have managed to make a big dent in that. And meanwhile, they've like burned through all their Fortnite money, and Fortnite is now kind of declining. I mean, it's declining in the same way that every battle royale is declining right now, which, by the way, that is interesting in itself. Like, where are the battle royale players going? Like, I think there's like a 30% decline in battle royale player, like average players for 2025 versus 2024. I can't remember what it was exactly, but like, like my guess would be that the people who, a very large percentage, maybe 30% of the people who were excited about battle royales when they came out, what battle royales were giving them has been completely replaced by like friend swap and stuff. Like they just wanted a game to like, you know, play multiplayer with a few friends. And Like they didn't really care about the competitive aspect of it or what the game was specifically. They just wanted like a nice like team co-op type of game. And Friendslop like much more directly and cleanly addresses that that desire or that demand. So that's interesting. But yeah, I'm not like I don't think Epic is going to like completely collapse or something. Like he mentions in this post that, you know, they've seen ups and downs in the industry. They've been around a really long time, and you know they're going to recover from this. And I think that actually is true. Like, it seems like they're being proactive about the problem, and they're also like they are still working very actively on Fortnite and doing interesting things in Fortnite. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the racing game that's in Fortnite, but like, let me pull this up. I think it's called Rocket Racing. If I recall correctly, this is let me just do the gameplay one. Yeah. Wait, where did it just say? Yeah, okay, so it's from the developers of Rocket League. Wait, Psionics? This is so loud. I'm sorry for the I'm sorry for the poor volume management. Something weird really happened with my Windows install this week, and I my volume somehow got completely messed up on OBS. I'm sorry, but yeah, Psionics. I kind of thought this was the like Wipeout developer. Who's the Wipeout developer? Clearly, this is not that. It's like a very similar name, but you can see why I might have thought that it was the Wipeout developer. But this actually looks like kind of cool.
I have been quickly.
You know, for Fortnite. It's not like I'm gonna go and install Fortnite and play this, but like it looks surprisingly good for Fortnite. There's like tech and weird, crazy stuff. You know, it's more arcadey than a typical racing game, and yeah. And yeah, they're like, you know, trying to copy Roblox and all this stuff. So yeah, I think Epic is gonna be fine, and you know, maybe we'll see them continue to try to shake up the industry in crazy ways in the future, or maybe they've learned their lesson. But yeah, I think they're gonna be fine, and I think we'll see Epic come back and do more interesting things again in the future. But yeah, I don't care about this stuff in terms of like I don't really care about the games that they make, but you know, it affects the industry, which affects the types of games that I care about. But yeah, this is kind of interesting. Let's turn this one down in advance. So yeah, that's that. What else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about DLSS. DLSS 5. Let's find the one image, right? Okay, this is the like Jesus Christ, it's terrible. Terrible website. I mean, most people aren't going to zoom in this far, but you see what I mean, like DLSS 5 off versus DLSS 5 on. People have rightly pointed out that the right side looks terrible, right? And the right side looks terrible in a very particular way. Like it looks like AI slop, right? It looks like every AI generated image, and especially when it's in motion, it seems to look. I'm not going to play the video because I'm afraid it's going to be so loud. Actually, I can probably turn the Firefox volume down in OBS. Let's see if that saves the day. Like in motion, it's even worse because you can tell that it's like a 2D type of. Like it doesn't understand the full scene. It doesn't understand the lighting of the full scene and how the face should fit in with everything else, right? That one is not as bad, you know. Some of them are Some of them are a lot worse than others, but generally it just looks very fake in a particular way, and in a way that's a little bit too familiar to all of us as of recently, right? But yeah, it really just doesn't fit in the scene is the main problem. Yeah, but I feel like the Grace from Resident Evil 1 is the clearest example. Or let me just refresh this page and get the thumbnail back. Like, here's what's interesting. Everyone has pointed out that the right side looks bad. No one is pointing out that the left side also kind of looks bad. Like regular how do I frame this? Like and I'm not criticizing like Resident Evil Requiem specifically with this, but like faces, like 3D faces and facial animations and stuff in games. Like let me just Requiem. I'm kind of afraid to Google a character from a Resident Evil game and go to images. I'm afraid of what I'm going to see. But yeah, like okay, like I'm pretty sure this is a real image from the game, unedited. Like this is just not a real facial expression, okay? And where was the other one I just clicked on? This one. This is not what a real face looks like. This is like this is not even like a YouTuber thumbnail facial expression. Like compare this to a YouTuber thumbnail, and the YouTuber thumbnail actually, well, sometimes people will be using AIs in their YouTube thumbnails. They're like AIing their face, so that's different. But like this just looks fake in a particular way that is very common in games, and there are exceptions. Like The Last of Us Part 2. If you see, and this is what I'm talking about, Misa. Like yeah, we watched the behind the scenes footage of Resident Evil Requiem, and it's just not the technology. They don't have as advanced facial capture setup and stuff as something like The Last of Us 2, which I would, as far as I'm aware, The Last of Us 2 is still like the absolute cutting edge of like making the faces actually look believable. They're trying to have at least somewhat serious cutscenes in this game, right? They're trying to have at least a somewhat serious story, which there are things you could say about that. We'll put that aside for the sake of this discussion. But like this, there's a soul behind these eyes, right? In a way that, it's not perfect, but like it's not perfect, but more so than Resident Evil and most games that do this type of stuff, these 3D models and facial animations and stuff. You can understand intuitively the emotions that the actors are portraying in when they're being captured, right? And they I'm sure they do a lot of tweaking after the capture, but like they've got some crazy technology stack in place. And when you watch the behind the scenes footage of The Last of Us Part 2, like you can see that it's a lot more involved. Like they've got all these dots on their face to like capture every little muscle movement and stuff. Well, yeah, and the lady was like intentionally doing that. But I'm saying if they had the better technology in place, it would look like a more believable version of thumbnail face. It would still be like maybe not great acting, but it wouldn't look quite as fake as this somehow. Anyway, like my point is I'm trying to be open-minded about this, even though, I don't necessarily expect these AI advancements that have happened recently to like keep going at the same pace. Who knows? They could keep getting crazier and crazier, and maybe at some point the technology is able to understand the lighting and how everything works in a more rigorous way. And maybe this will get to a point where it is cheaper than this, and better than this. Maybe it'll get to a point where it's good enough. Like The Last of Us 2, I think is good enough. Like it's maybe not as good as a watching real actors in a movie or whatever, but it's good enough to tell a story that's somewhat serious. This maybe is not. and yeah, maybe this gets there in a way that's like, you know, cheap enough and doesn't require this crazy technology stack that like Naughty Dog and only Naughty Dog seemingly has. I mean, I guess Rockstar is like kind of close, at least close behind, close second. You get what I'm saying? Like maybe in 10 years we won't be doing as much of whatever technology made this happen. We'll be doing this, and it will actually be better. Like, cause yeah, I totally agree that this is not it, but I just don't think this is it either. So I'm trying to be open-minded about the future. And I feel like that has not been part of the discussion at all. People are just used to this. There's a certain type of brain damage that people have with video game graphics where they think it's better than it is until the better thing comes along, right? Like remember PS3 generation? Like everyone thought the PS3 graphics were amazing. And then like now if you show them like original Last of Us 1, you can see that like the background, the environments, the stuff that's distant in the environments looks really bad. The faces look really bad. Like, yeah, like it's a very, very clear difference, and it looks actively bad now that you're used to something better. And somehow, because this is still the state of the art it's not the state of the art, but it's like still the norm, it's still the standard in most AAA games. Like people think that this is good or even good enough, and it's just not. It's just not. But yeah, I kind of agree. Like live action cutscenes, I mean, I don't know. It is jarring to go to a totally different visual scheme or whatever. Totally, you know, you're looking at a different person now when you're looking at the character than you are when you're playing the game, or when you're watching the cutscene versus playing the game. Anyway, I think that covers my point. But like this character has light in her eyes. Like, I mean, literally, both literally and figuratively. There's light behind the eyes here that is not in Grace from Resident Evil Requiem. How's it going, J-Town? J-Town 2909. All right, are we ready to talk about Resident Evil Requiem? Are we ready? Anything else interesting happened recently? You guys playing anything interesting that you're dying to talk about? Let's see. Wait, how do I forget how to do this. Boom. Okay, let's talk about Resident Evil Requiem. I have pulled up someone else's footage. I'm a real game reviewer now. I pulled up someone else's footage. This is absolute cinema. The title card. I don't really know if the title card needs to be there in terms of like, let me close this background thing. I don't know if the title card really needs to be there because, you know, it's in the Twitch title, it's in the YouTube title, whatever. But anyway, okay, I need to like, I think I'm worried these sounds are going to be distracting for me, but I'll turn, actually I'll turn it down for me like this. That should be fine. That should be balanced. Tell me if the sound is not balanced. I'll turn it down a little bit more. But yeah, the thing is like if I want to have my gameplay and my camera like not over and my chat like not overlapping, like the camera plus the chat on screen like really takes up a lot of screen space. Like you kind of have to have the gameplay like over here. In order to make room for that, and then that kind of just leaves the space for the title card, right? So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I wanted to talk about this. Yeah, I will say, might want the game sound off for editing the video later. That's a good point. I'll figure out how to like split that separately. Actually, yeah, I can split that in the future, but right now I'm going to have the game sound off. Okay. Yeah, you don't need that anyway, and it's just going to distract me. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Resident Evil Requiem because I enjoyed it pretty well. Well, okay. I've seen a lot of discussion about this game, and none I feel like captures the things that I like about it. Like some of the discussion, like the mainstream discussion, sometimes kind of dances around the type of things that I like about it, but it often gets lost in like story and spectacle kind of stuff as expected of mainstream of mainstream video game discussion. And then the other the other side of it, the other type category of discussion that I've seen is from the arcade crowd, of course. And I feel like that has also been missing the point. Like, okay, I'm going to use the Electric Underground review just to frame the discussion, right? Because I assume a lot of people watching this have seen that review already. It's like one of the more critical and interesting reviews of Resident Evil Requiem that you can find. I'm gonna spoil the game, by the way, in case you can't already tell by the fact that I'm playing footage. I'm not gonna show stuff from later, I don't think. Maybe I will, but like, yeah, I'm not necessarily planning on showing stuff from later, but yeah, I'm gonna talk about like what the game turns into in the second half, which is maybe a little bit of a surprise and things like that. So if you want to avoid spoilers, maybe don't watch. But yeah, I'm going to talk about the Electric Underground review because it's kind of the Steelman version of a lot of the discourse that I've been hearing from the arcade crowd, right? And like I think Mark from the Electric Underground is a good game reviewer in a certain way. Like I agree with a lot of his points. Like he's posts an hour and a half video and it's like actually very insightful about action game design and about like about the game. Like it's saying things about the game that are true, and they're like, for the most part I agree. Like he talks about how the set pieces should be more demanding. He gets into specifics about that. He's talking about how the game would be better if the two different characters campaigns, like it's one long campaign where you switch back and forth between two different characters, right? And if the two characters actually like interplayed with each other in interesting ways, right, like that would be better. And if you had to manage your resources as Grace and then it actually affected the Leon part more, right, like that would be more interesting. Like I agree. He gets way more into it than that, but my point is I agree with his critiques of Resident Evil Requiem as an action game. It is an excellent review of Resident Evil 9 as an action game. The problem is Resident Evil 9 is not an action game. Okay? It's just not. At least it's not primarily an action game. And so you watch this hour and a half review, the same, my point is that the same applies to most of the discussion that I've been seeing from like the arcade people. You watch this review, you read this commentary, and it's like, yeah, that's true. Like I agree that the game would be better if it were like, if these specific things were changed, but it's not really addressing the parts of the game that are good, the parts of the game that do work well. And the part that I'm showing right now is the perfect place to start, because this is the best part of the game. This Grace Care Center section, which is like hours long on your first playthrough, probably 3 or 4 hours long if I had to guess. If you're being thorough, it's probably at least that. And like the Electric Underground review like kind of skips over this whole section, like, or at least he skips through it very quickly to get to the parts, to get to like the next set piece where you shoot something for like 5 seconds. And it's like, it's just disorienting to me it's disorienting to me because those parts were just not the memorable parts that I enjoyed. Those are the parts that it's like, yeah, those could very obviously be fleshed out, but like that's not really what the game is doing. Yeah, I'm just there's no focus on the parts that are good, and so I wanted to explain what I think is good about this game. What I think is good about this game, what I feel like people are missing or glossing over in the discussion. Because yeah, I enjoyed this game pretty well. It's not necessarily my idea of a good game. Like it's AAA slop, right? It's AAA comfy slop. Like it's B movie, you know. It's not going to challenge you. It's not going to challenge you in a major way. At least it's not going to like show you something totally new, a totally new thing that the medium can do and blow your mind. Like they're making like mass market entertainment here. Like you have to be real about what they're doing. But you know, considering that, I enjoyed it more than I expected. I enjoyed it more than any other Resident Evil campaign since Resident Evil 4. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So the best part of the game, the only word that I have, the way that I talk about it is as exploration. And I know that can mean a lot of different things. Like it can mean, Hollow Knight, or, some Metroidvania. Like I think a lot of action game players, people who only play action games or mainly play action games, they think of exploration as like this really stupid thing in like Hollow Knight where you're just running around and like hitting every wall to like find the fake wall, or you're just like going back, like retracing your steps like mindlessly, and you're like going back and like, double checking everything and like going back to places where you've already been to like use an item that you have now and things like that, or use an upgrade that you have now. And I don't like that either. But I do think that even that, they have a tendency to underrate and underappreciate because they're not in the right mindset that I would recommend for this type of game. Okay, so let me yeah, it's really hard to just to describe a type of gameplay that people have never experienced firsthand or like really noticed. Maybe they've experienced it to some degree but haven't noticed. And so think about like Dark Souls. Like most people here have probably played Dark Souls or Demon Souls. Less so Elden Ring as an open world game. The constrained nature of the exploration in Dark Souls kind of matters for this, and the constrained like levels, like the fact that you are turning a corner and you have certain expectations when you turn that corner. There's more that's unknown that's close to you, right? There's more. So exploration, let me frame it this way. Exploration is about the unknown, okay? It's about, you have to appreciate exploration gameplay, you have to embrace the unknown as an interesting part of the game. And, if you know the Electric Underground, or if you know like a lot of the people who kind of fall into that kind of taste, you know that they don't really care about blind playthroughs. They don't really care about first playthroughs in general. Like the importance of the first playthrough to them is like dwarfed by the replayability, the future playthroughs. But if you're interested in video games in general, and not just interested in like, judging everything as an arcade game, if you want to know all the valuable things that video games can do and understand them all, then you need to understand this distinction and understand that there are some games that are more about the first playthrough. Like I feel like this should be obvious, but yeah, it's and they're less about the action as well. Like the action is there in this game to make your exploration choices matter. It's not there to create a cool like combat dynamic where you're like going back and forth between different enemies and like, juggling all of these threats at once and keeping it all in your head and like that kind of stuff. And like, yeah, it's it's not really about that. Like when a Resident Evil game, like think about how much that this game is doing, and that all Resident Evil games, like, well, not 4 so much, because 4 kind of is an action game, right? At least more so. But all the way back to like Resident Evil 1. Like think about Resident Evil 1's like transforming zombies, or like the surprise dog attacks. Like, and then for Resident Evil 9, think about the ways that they mix up the enemy placements. Like they try to surprise you with enemies waiting in a certain spot, waiting behind a corner with a grenade that you, if you hear the beeping, if you notice the beeping, you know, you can anticipate that. But like also you can anticipate like enemies moving to slightly different spots at a certain point in the progression through the game. You can anticipate enemies like crawling out from under a table. You can anticipate enemies like, you can have expectations about whether these enemies are going to stop, whether this enemy is going to stop doing what she's doing, like cleaning up the blood from the floor when you walk past, or, you know, you can have different expectations about these things. All of these things, all of these enemy placements and all of the patterns that they have, none of that is there to make interesting action for you. It's not there for the sake of action. It's there to make, like, you know, when you see them, you then have to fight them. At least often you do, but it's not there for the action. The fight is not the point. The action and the fight, the action is there to make your exploration choices matter and to add tension to every move that you make. And, you know, this is why Dark Souls is a good analogy, right? Like, especially Dark Souls 1, like you are moving through a pretty constrained space. There's some branching paths, and you can like think about where those paths are likely to lead and stuff like that. But then when you're progressing down the main path, like they are intentionally putting a lot of traps. They're doing things to try to surprise you. Surprise is something that only works one time, right? So it should be obvious that this is mainly about the first playthrough rather than replayability. But yeah, it's often like one threat at a time, but those threats are surprising. They wouldn't be interesting if they were just out in the open and you walked up and you fought those threats one at a time. Like it is all about how it interacts with the level design, which means that it's all about how it interacts with your expectations. And this is the tricky part about trying to explain exploration gameplay, because it's all about expectations. And yeah, but for example, you know, this game, Resident Evil 9, when at some point it like changes the enemies, you know, the first time you go through the west wing of the care center, the enemies are all in a certain spot, but then at some point it mixes up a couple of the enemy placements. Like the butcher starts walking around in a different spot, and a couple other zombies start walking around at different spots. And that, you know, you can't really expect that the first time you see it. But after you've seen it the first time, I mean, the first time you see it, like, it probably scares the shit out of you, which, or at least it's likely to if you walk around a corner and see it the same way that I did. Walk around a corner and this giant guy with a knife is standing there where you didn't expect it, where you thought you were safe because you've been through this area before. But the main purpose of it is to change your expectations for the rest of the game after that point. And, you know, for that reason, it's awesome. It's especially good that the Grace Care Center part, that's the best part of the game and has the most of this type of gameplay that I'm describing. It's especially good that it happens so early in the game, because even after they're doing less of this stuff later in the game, you're still in the right mindset from earlier. You're still thinking about it in that way and appreciating that stuff when it does happen. But yeah, I feel like I should give more like specific examples. But yeah, the gameplay is it's engaging with the game. It's engaging with what you don't know, and it is trying to have better expectations than you would naively have. Like, okay, let me go back, because one example that This is like kind of a silly example, but I think because it's so minimal, I can actually talk about it clearly and explain. Is this? Where is it? Okay. Here we go. So this is what I assume action game fans would talk about as just pure downtime, right? Like, you have to get past this butcher. The butcher is here to your left. And but to get around him, I mean, you could try to like sneak around him on the left side of this table, but that you probably have a good sense that that's not going to work, right? So you have to push this cart with a little vat of blood or whatever. Not little, a pretty big vat of blood. And you have to move it very slowly, and it's one of these kind of semi-QTE things that I assume people would just instantly dismiss as stupid filler gameplay, like not that interesting or whatever, or like it's supposed to be scary but it's not that scary. But the thing is, with the right mindset, this is at least a lot more interesting than you think, if not actually genuinely good gameplay. I wouldn't quite go far enough to say that it's good gameplay, but there's a lot that you can think about here, and that you should be thinking about if you're treating this game as what it is, or at least what to me a survival horror type of game is. Like, you can actually see this person is doing a horrible job, or at least they are like maybe they just already know because they've played it before, but like they're not looking at the butcher as they're pushing it. If you're playing this for the first time, you should be looking at the butcher as you push it, and you should be planning for every possible thing that could be about to happen. And because this is such a constrained scenario, there's only so many things that realistically could happen. And this goes back to, why Dark Souls is more interesting than Elden Ring. Like, Elden Ring is so open, whereas Dark Souls is like often just a couple of different choices at once, and like a couple of different things that could reasonably happen from here at once, right? Anyway, like, go back. A skilled player and a player who appreciates exploration gameplay is actually thinking quite a lot here. Like, when you're at this point, right, you are thinking, you're running through all sorts of scenarios and weighing their odds against each other and their risk levels against each other, because when something happens with the butcher, like when he stops chopping, or when he plays a voice line, like right when he says something new, or when he does some other animation, right? Like, you want to be ready to react quickly and act immediately and know what you're going to do immediately when that happens, because every second potentially counts. And, you don't want to play this, if you're actually trying to enjoy the game, you don't want to just play this super slow and like push it a tiny bit and then wait and hide, and then push it a tiny bit more and then wait and hide. And also, you don't know, like maybe he could at some point walk around the other way and like catch you if you're taking too long. So for multiple reasons, you want to make this go relatively quickly. So when you're pushing this thing, you should be watching the butcher, and you should be thinking about what you're going to do in different situations. And so you kind of get in this pushing the vat of blood thing, you kind of get into a like, situation like where you're driving toward the stoplight, or you're driving toward the intersection, right? The traffic light is green, but you don't know when it's going to turn yellow, right? And so you're just thinking like, okay, well, if I get a little bit farther, like if I get to this point, I will continue through the light. Whereas, if I get not quite to that point, I'll slam on the brakes and stop at the intersection, right? Like, you get into that type of situation, right, where you're pushing this vat, and you should have a threshold that you're developing in your mind of like, okay, if he does this, if he says his voice line, or if he like stops chopping or whatever after a certain point, then I'm just going to push it and continue through. But if he does something before I get to that certain point, then what am I going to do? Like, okay, am I going to like immediately stop? Am I going to like try to push it a little bit more to like get to make it more likely that I can finish getting around the next corner on the next like cycle or whatever, right? The next time that I push it, am I going to like, and like these type of things are determined by like a lot of factors. Like you have to look and see like, okay, am I like halfway yet, or am I not quite halfway? Or, that requires you to look at the environment and make a judgment about like when you're going to be able to squeeze around that next corner. Right. And, it requires you to make judgments about like how quickly you're going to be able to get back to push it the next time after he, turns around and goes back to whatever he's doing. And I mean, who knows, maybe he's going to go do something else after he checks on you and sees the cart moved. And like, some of these things you can't really predict realistically, or at least like you can have ideas about what's going to happen, but it's such a small percentage chance that it's not actually going to affect how you play. But my point is like, there's a lot to think about here. And like, you should plan, like, if he starts walking left to check on the other thing where he originally came from, like, are you going to stay in this corner, or are you going to bolt, or are you going to try to stay in this corner for a long time? And then if he gets close enough, then you're going to bolt. And then that starts to, as soon as you start thinking about that, you're then thinking about like, okay, well, what's outside? Is there a chance that there's going to be an enemy like in the doorway that I came into this area from when I start running backwards away from the butcher, and then I'm screwed and I'm sandwiched? Like there are infinite things to actually think hard about here. And it's interesting to optimize your experience here and optimize this to make it go as quickly and smoothly as possible. And those things are actually relevant. It's not like you're just thinking about things that are like super rare, not going to happen. It's like there is a lot to think about just to make this go quicker and smoother, which you should want to do. Like if you're trying to enjoy the game, you should want it to go quicker and smoother. So yeah, I feel like that is a good example, but a common pattern, or a common type of example in this game and in Resident Evil games going all the way back to like Resident Evil 1 is like what you take from the item box. Like the limited inventory space makes it so that you have to make these kinds of decisions, or makes it so that you are incentivized to think about this kind of stuff. You're incentivized to think, okay, what am I likely to encounter? What threats am I likely to encounter in the next area? What key item stuff? What key items am I likely to be able to use in this next area? What am I likely to pick up, and how much am I likely to pick up? Like, is it an area that I've been to before and mostly cleared out and I just have to pick up a couple things, or, whatever. Like in Resident Evil 1, I've used this example in the past. Like in Resident Evil 1, the game makes it very clear in the opening cutscene that there are dogs outside, right? Like that there are these zombie dogs outside and there's a ton of them. And then it reminds you about this in multiple stages. Like it reminds you of it in the last part of the opening cutscene where like, I think Wesker or Barry or someone tells you like, don't go back, don't try to go back outside. Like, you're gonna die. and then like so that should be like a reminder of the dogs. And then like the next time you go out on like a balcony, like on the east wing of the mansion, first floor, there's like a little outside, it's not like a balcony, it's like just a little outside courtyard space, and you see dogs, and I'm pretty sure they don't attack you, at least in the remake they don't attack you, but like, or maybe if you take too long, they attack you or something. But anyway, you can go out there and see the dogs, right? See them behind the fence where they can't reach you. So the game has reminded you multiple times there are dogs outside. So when you get the dog whistle item, even though you don't know what that's going to be used for exactly, you should be thinking, if you're engaging with the game in this way and noticing these things, these clues, you should be more likely to bring the dog whistle with you when you're going to an outside area. And then maybe slightly more as well, slightly more than nothing if it's like, and if you're going to an area that's like connected with an outside area, but it's, like it's got windows to the outside or something. But especially if you were going outside, you should be more likely to want to bring that. Or like, yeah. And it's not just these type of decisions. Like there's, like exploration is so many different things, right? It's all of this like dealing with the unknown and like anticipating and predicting, and it's everything about your expectations in games and how it causes you to play. And like, in Resident Evil 1, maybe you like at the very beginning of the game in Resident Evil 1, you go into the dining hall, and then you kind of come back to the main room pretty quickly after that. And then after that, it's a little more open-ended, right? Like you can go back into the dining hall and keep exploring that way, like up the stairs where like birds eventually show up and stuff. Or you can go upstairs and into the upper floor of the dining hall. And wait, can you kill this guy in one hit? Oh, no. I just got distracted by the footage. Anyway, you like something that you might decide as like a exploration minded and like a thoughtful player of this kind of game is, okay, I'm going to go to the top floor first and go into the dining hall on the top floor, because I saw when I was in the dining hall lower floor before, I saw that there was an upper floor. And it seems like even if you don't notice anything specific there when you're on the lower floor, you can see that there's like, maybe I'm misremembering, but I think you can see that there's like gaps where you could potentially like drop down from above, which, by the way, you can't actually do that in Resident Evil 1. I'm pretty sure you can't drop down yourself from above, or maybe you can, but that's not the point. The point is you're thinking about what might be possible, what the game might let you do, what the game might be, what the game might show you. And you are doing your best to give yourself a smoother experience by having better predictions. It's not about predicting everything perfectly. That's completely unrealistic. Like, it might be that every time in this game you have two options, you're trying to choose between two different things. An exploration, a thoughtful exploration-minded player will think like 100 times harder about that choice than an average player, and that will only earn them like a 55% chance of picking correctly instead of a 50% chance, or a 50% like 55% instead of a 50% like success rate of picking correctly, right? So like I'm not trying to like exaggerate this and make it seem like more extreme than it is. Like, it's the wins from this are relatively small, but the point is that it's much more fun to play the game that way. It's much more rewarding that way. Like, even though it's only that 5% difference, maybe, like, first of all, playing this game in this way makes you, and thinking about it in this way makes you a lot better at games that actually do block your progress when you're not good at this kind of thing. A game like Return of the Obra Dinn is all about looking at your environment and trying to understand things that the game has not told you yet. A game like The Witness, like a lot of the optional stuff in that game, especially a game like Outer Wilds, that game has a lot of tools, or kind of like stuff to help you, like the ship log and stuff. But these games are much more like the type of game where if these skills are not developed in you as a player, you are going to have a bad time. You're going to get completely blocked probably at some point. And so, there's an argument that even if it's only a 5% difference in a game like Resident Evil Requiem, you should play it that way to get better at other games. But it's also just way more fun. It's way more fun to think more and you're engaging with the game more deeply. You are, it's rewarding in that way, but it's also just really satisfying when you do choose correctly. Like, I promise, if you do this well, you will notice the situations where, naively you would have chosen the wrong way, but because you used your brain, you ended up choosing the right way. Like, I promise you will notice situations like that. Like, that happens to me all the time. And I promise that will be extremely satisfying. Okay. Yeah, I think I've given a nice, have I given a, I have a hard time knowing like whether I'm making a good case for this, and like, have I given a wide enough range of examples? Like, what how's the chat feeling about this? Are you following this rant? Are you following this rant? Like, yeah, other games. So again, this is not, I said at the beginning, this is not my favorite game of all time or anything. Like, this is not even necessarily my idea of a good game in terms of like the structure of the game and a lot of the sloppy stuff. I've convinced you of the genius of RE1. I don't know if that was the goal exactly, but yeah, this is not my ideal game, or my ideal any specific type of game does not really look very much like this. But I was able to enjoy it by thinking about it and approaching it this way. But yeah, it doesn't. I will say, if you're interested in this kind of game, maybe start with some of those other. Maybe look at more. If you're interested in like trying to get into it and trying to play games that make you think in this way, or that help you get better at thinking in this way, and the games that you can try to appreciate in this way, I would not start with Resident Evil Requiem, because they really don't want to punish you, right? Like, this is what I was saying about like the optional stuff in The Witness, about like Obra Dinn, about other detective games like that, like by like Outer Wilds. Like, those games are more, because they're not ultra mainstream games where you have to drag the lowest common denominator player along. They are more willing to punish you if you're missing something, and they're more willing to make something as subtle as exploration the focus more so, and more of a requirement to engage with the game, which means that if you're trying to build that skill by playing those games rather than Resident Evil Requiem, you are more strong. You're more encouraged to do it. Like, you can do it in Resident Evil Requiem, but it's very much I would argue that it's the right way to play this game if you're actually trying to enjoy it, but it's very much not required to get through the game. And that just comes with the territory of like AAA games. Like, AAA games aren't forcing you to do super hard action challenges either, or solve super hard puzzles or whatever. But yeah. I recognize that, as I kind of said this earlier, but I recognize that this is a style of gameplay that completely it's worth emphasizing just how much this contradicts the entire arcade design philosophy, right? So it doesn't surprise me that there are people out here like critiquing this game from an arcade perspective and just seemingly not understanding at all this other way that you can engage with it and have a much better time. Like, this approach to gameplay, this style of gameplay, completely contradicts arcade action gameplay. First of all, it's very subtle. Like, it literally doesn't work if the game forces you to think about any particular possibility. Like the game can stop you. A game like Obra Dinn can stop you from advancing in the game if you don't understand a particular thing, but it can't prompt you in the same way. It can't prompt you to think about this particular thing, right? It can't prompt you to be like, well, what do you think? Do you think there might be dogs outside? Where do you think the dogs might be? Like, that would ruin the game. That would completely ruin the whole point of this type of gameplay, is that you are going to have your own ideas. You have to you have to notice what's around you and think about what that means for the game going forward, for what you haven't seen yet. Like, being prompted to think about the dogs specifically, or being prompted to think about like even in that butcher situation, like, I don't know, that kind of happens. I feel like that kind of happens automatically. But anyway, yeah, it doesn't really work if the game forces you to think about a particular possibility. It doesn't work if you use a guide, right? If you're following a guide through the game, you already know exactly what's going to happen, and that completely ruins everything for this type of gameplay. It only really works on a first playthrough, and all of that is very contradictory to like the Electric Underground type of taste, type of way of engaging with games. So I understand where people are coming from, but that's just how it is. This is just a fact about games, is that they can be a lot of different things. And so there's this massive interesting category of gameplay. This is my point here. This is what I want to get across. If you are that type of person, I would like for you to recognize that there is a massive interesting category of gameplay that contradicts your philosophy. And you can take it or leave it. I can't force you to play games this way, think about games this way. But yeah, when you don't understand that this is a possibility that is there and that is interesting and that is deep, regardless of what you say about, people will say any game that's not replayable is not deep. It's very clearly not true. It's very clearly not true. That's a perspective that you can only have if you have not played difficult puzzle exploration kind of games. Um, so yeah, you can take it or leave it, but personally, I will be taking it. I wanted to talk. I want to talk about one more thing, but I will. I'll respond to the chat first. Have I played Code Veronica? I played Code Veronica, but it was a long time ago, so I can't really say much. I can't really say that much about it, but it would not surprise me if that's true. It would not surprise me if that's true. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I remember, the general like progression through the run and places you go and stuff, but I don't remember a lot of the details of the gameplay, so it's hard for me to comment on that. But yeah, I have played it. Are they going to remake it? Because people don't really think of it as like a main Resident Evil game. Like I wonder if, like, I think it is like almost objectively it's a main line Resident Evil game, because it was planned that way as part of development, and it's crucial to the story and not, it's canon and all this stuff. It's clearly a mainline Resident Evil game in all but name, but I do wonder if it would sell a lot fewer copies because than these other remakes, because people don't realize that. So I wonder if they're anticipating that and wouldn't really care to remake it and would rather just remake, make the one remake Resident Evil 1 remake or something else instead. But they are kind of running out of other stuff, other options. Like you can remake Resident Evil 1 with modern controls and people will let you get away with that, even though it's a little bit silly to remake a remake. But other than that, like what else can they really do? Like Resident Evil 5, I guess you can remake Resident Evil 5 at this point, but I don't know. That starts to seem like, isn't that PS3 generation? Like that starts to feel a little bit ridiculous. It's not exactly, but then again, it has the kind of tank controls that Resident Evil 4 has, and people don't, normal gamers at this point apparently can't handle tank controls. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't know what they're gonna do, but yeah, Code Veronica is interesting. Would I say traditional Zelda design philosophy is similar? Its combat isn't exactly focused or deep, but the level design and the formal constraints make it excel at exploration via problem solving. Yeah, for sure. And especially like, well, I was gonna say especially within the dungeons, but maybe this is true to some degree with all the decisions that you're making about where you're going next in Zelda, and what you're expecting behind the next corner and things like that, and like how you expect the progression through the main story to work to proceed. There's definitely some overlap there for sure. And again, I don't like, I loved Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask when I was a kid. Let me just put that out there. But nowadays, it's not really my favorite type of gameplay, just like, or not really my favorite type of game in the same way that Resident Evil isn't. Like I enjoy keeping up with the series and playing these kind of games, but even if they made that older style of Zelda game that's more about exploration, it's still, I don't think it would stand a chance of like, making a game of the year list even for me, because I just, you can appreciate this kind of thing that I'm talking about so much more clearly and cleanly in a game that's like completely focused on it. So yeah, this is just, yeah. But yeah, if you learn how to appreciate it from those other games and then bring that back to something like Resident Evil or something like classic 3D Zelda or 2D Zelda, it's really nice. It's nice. It is a way of engaging with games that I highly recommend. But yeah, I was saying that, you can take it or leave it. I understand why people might want to leave it, why people might want to just always engage with games as if they're arcade games or whatever, because it does introduce new problems when you try to enjoy some games as arcade kind of games and other games as exploration games. Like, it introduces, I mean, the main problem that it introduces is, how do you know how do you know which game this is up front, right? Like, how do you know when to play the game blind and when to start using outside resources? Because like, I use outside resources when I'm playing like arcade games pretty often. I'll often start playing them. I'll usually, maybe always, start playing them like more or less blind. But like, I don't worry as much about avoiding spoilers for those kinds of games. I'll often read stuff or watch gameplay about a arcade shmup or whatever that I haven't played. And then when I get around to playing it, I don't feel that my experience has been negatively affected by knowing the things that I know about it. But what I've been saying about exploration implies that there are some, there are some games that where you really shouldn't do that, and where that is going to really mess up the experience. And so if you start caring about both of these kinds of gameplay and trying to appreciate both action and exploration gameplay, then this is kind of a complicated question that you now have to make for every game you play going forward. Which, I mean, that makes it sound a lot worse than it is. Like, usually it's obvious, right? Like, arcade games generally were designed to be played as part of a community, right? Like, you're in the arcade, you're watching other people play naturally, like you can't avoid it. And you're talking to other people about it. And so, it makes sense to try to recreate that experience in the modern era as well. Like, reading stuff about it, watching really good players, looking up the world record run. Like, that's totally reasonable for most arcade games. And then like on the other end of the spectrum, like obviously a puzzle game is ruined if you know if you know everything about it. Like, if you know what's coming, if you know the solution, like a puzzle game is nothing. A puzzle game is literally nothing. That's not exactly true necessarily, because it can still, like, you can still go through a puzzle game and see all the different applications of the mechanics and stuff like that. But I think in a good puzzle game, you're not likely to understand and process that very well if you're just kind of rolling through everything at a breakneck pace and like copying someone else's solutions. Like, you kind of have to engage with it and think about it as you're going by solving the puzzles. So yeah, I feel like anything puzzle based or horror based as well, like, obviously you don't want to know what's coming in those kinds of games. But sometimes sometimes it is less clear, and you just have to give it a chance blind for a while. And if it doesn't feel right, then you change course and you try looking something up and, go from there. Like, but yeah, it's complicated because like often a single game does have both types of gameplay within it. Like, Resident Evil 9 is actually an example of this, because there's something called the final puzzle, which is super optional, but like, so I've this whole time I've been arguing that the first playthrough should be blind in Resident Evil Requiem if you're really trying to appreciate it. But on the other hand, Resident Evil 9 has something in it called the final puzzle that literally no one ever is going to solve alone. I feel pretty confident that no one will ever do it. It has been solved, but like, it took several days after the game's release for it to be solved at all, and I'm just amazed by how bad this gameplay is, by the way, this footage. It took several days for it to be solved, and it was only fully solved through data mining. The final step was solved through data mining. And yeah, so I'm not going to suggest that anyone is really doing the collectibles while this is ridiculous. This is why I need to get my own footage. But what was I saying? Anyway, yeah, no one should try to solve that by themselves. And yeah, I was actually going through, here's my experience with this puzzle. I went through the first playthrough blind, and I was going through the kind of meta progression that this game has, where you're like the achievements in this game, they tell you what the challenges are for the achievements inside the game and how many points you're going to get in the meta progression by completing each of those things, right? And so the goal of the meta progression, and this kind of goes with the expectations thing a little bit, like, this is a type of routing. You kind of have to route multiple playthroughs. Like you go through one playthrough and you try to be reasonably thorough and, you know, understand most of the game on your first playthrough. But then you see all these challenges after that, and you kind of plan 1 or 2 or 3 more playthroughs where you're like, okay, I'm going to try to like do this. I'm going to try to like go through this playthrough without healing. And I'm going to do that on easy mode. I'm just going to breeze through it and try to do the speed run at the same time. But maybe like if I feel like I have time, I'm going to like try to do this thing along the way. And like I have some idea, like some of them are not super obvious. They're kind of puzzly, like try to get 2 zombies to fight each other. You're probably not naturally going to do that in your first playthrough. You have to think about how to potentially do that, what tools you could potentially use to make that happen. It's not like an amazing puzzle or anything, but like, you know, there are things to think about and things to plan, and you kind of have to plan this meta progression route. And that's at least a little bit interesting. It wasn't my favorite part of the game, but I was going through that and, you know, trying to appreciate that part of the game as well. And I was actually having a pretty good time and making smooth progress, and all of that came to a halt instantly when I started seriously trying to think about this puzzle. The final puzzle, actually, let me just play the video. Cause this is just hilarious. Like, this is one of the funniest things in games in a long time. Like, we're just gonna watch this 8-minute video, okay?
Game challenge in Resident Evil Requiem that stumped the internet for several days after launch. But thanks to a huge community effort and data miners like Cairo and Rancy Cancy, every step and trigger was figured out. If you're looking to solve the final puzzle and complete the final challenge it's attached to, then this guide is for you. If you haven't finished the game yet, you should probably do that first. This video has full spoilers for the entire thing. I'm not kidding when I say spoilers for the entire game. Before the final challenge even appears, you need to roll credits. You'll need to be on your minimum 2nd playthrough, realistically your 3rd, to get this done. The first time you finish Requiem, the final challenge will appear on the challenges list in the pause menu. It's the last one, and in English it reads, "Let the sweet pair hear the voice." But who exactly are the sweet pair, and what voice do they need to hear? We're gonna answer all of those questions right here. The sweet pair in question is Emily and Marie, but considering Marie has transformed into the big monster known as the Girl, she's not exactly cooperative. Instead of talking to Marie herself, we'll need to find her doll. Technically, you can do this first part on your first playthrough, but without the final challenge and New Game Plus unlocked, it won't mean much. In any case, we begin in the Rhodes Hill Care Center's basement, so you can safely proceed through the game until you reach that point. Your first hint about what to do down here comes later in the game, when you reach the hidden lab under the care center courtyard, but we'll tell you about it now. A file labeled Subject 170 Record can be picked up from a rolling table just before leaving the first big test chamber. It mentions blood being collected from one...
Okay, first of all, no one even, no one reads this shit. This is something I want to talk about in the future at a little more length, like how bad it is that video game writing, so much of it. So like there was this discourse on Twitter recently. This is such an aside, but there's discourse on Twitter recently about how like video games are so much better than books because they have more words in them. And obviously people were responding like, okay, but those words are like press X to attack and like, you know, stupid stuff like that. But even beyond that, like so often writing in games is this kind of like found record thing, whether it's like a recorded, you know, the recorded like discussion or like monologue from a person or whatever is a little bit better, but often it's this thing that Resident Evil does where it's like scientific record and like or it's like, you know, sign you know, in Cairn, which I reviewed recently, like you find these signs all around the world and it's all these like pamphlets and signs and like it's nonfiction stuff, right? And the fact that it's nonfiction kind of makes it automatically bad in a way that people don't recognize. Like so much of the writing in video games is this very boring, like the prose is not going to be interesting, right? You're not having the good experience, the aesthetic experience of reading of like reading a good novel when you're reading this kind of stuff, right? Or reading good poetry. Like, it's just not happening. And I feel like people need to recognize that that is a problem and try to solve it. Like, you're hiring writers, you're hiring serious writers to do this stuff, and then you're just not letting them write anything that could possibly be good, like could possibly be enjoyable in its own right to read, right? Like, this can have interesting ideas in it, but it can't give you an aesthetic experience in and of itself the way a novel or a poem or whatever can. Anyway, no one reads this stuff, and like certainly no one is like looking for hidden codes in it, right? So anyway, here we go.
115 test subjects. This collection and processing happens in the basement, in the room appropriately titled Processing, near the collection pool. It's the one with the giant blood pool and the conveyor belt of corpses. As the note suggests, we need to wait for 115 bodies to be dumped into the blood here. Once you enter the room, don't touch the draining mechanism. It'll take about 15 minutes of real-world time to reach our number, so leave the game running and come back after a snack or something.
15 minutes later.
Once 15 minutes have passed, you can drain the pool and fight through the meat grinder sequence. Here's the thing, you shouldn't kill any of these zombies yourself during this scene. Shove them, kneecap them, shoot them a few times, sure, but make sure you don't do any finishing blows. Let the grinders at the end of the vat do the work. Once the process completes, you can continue through the rest of the basement sequence. When you return to the main care center, head over to the bathrooms in the west wing. This next part sounds silly, but it truly is part of the puzzle. Pick any of the toilets and flush it 8 times. Yes, really. The hint for this actually comes from the very first file you're given. During the Wrenwood Hotel sequence, Grace will open her inventory to read the investigation report. There's a photo in here of a dead body.
I'm just so curious that if you looked at this photo knowing that the clue was in this photo, not knowing what the clue is, but knowing that it's in this photo, would you know? Like, this to me is what totally breaks it. Like, everything else in this, like if you gave me 100, 200 hours to like full autism this puzzle, I think I would have figured out everything else except for this poopy 8, right?
Beside a toilet, and the number 8 is faintly
like, are you joking? That is so demented. This is just in a random file. There's like 100 files in the game, right? Like, you have no idea to look for this here. There's no clue to look for this here or anything
smeared
like that.
On the bathroom stall next to it. So, flush any toilet 8 times, then continue through the game as normal, all the way up to the escape from the underground lab. Once the tank bursts and floods the room with a bunch of blood, it's time to pay attention. Just before taking the stairs out of the blood, Marie's doll will be on the ground, ready for you to pick up. Everything we've done so far actually moved the doll through processing and flushed it down to this underground lab. What's more, Marie's doll is a permanent item. Finish the game on this save file, and it will still be in your item box when you start New Game Plus. Once you roll credits, it's time to move to the next phase. In your next playthrough, you'll have the Marie doll in your inventory box, ready to go for the rest of the puzzle. First, proceed through the game all the way through the basement sequence again. When you return topside, turn around and pick up the girl's severed hand from the ground. This is our key to the rest of the puzzle. Take the severed hand to any of the microscopes here at Rhodes Hill, and you'll get another model DNA challenge to solve. When you do, you'll see a cryptic message and a sequence: GGC, AAG, AUA, ACG, UGU, CAU. You can input the solution anytime after scanning the severed hand, but let's explain how to solve it first. The first symbol is easy to figure out. It's actually written right on the microscope in the blood lab. There's a small bit of text that says G equals 150 million. This is roughly the distance from Earth to the Sun, in miles. So, G equals Sun. Take note of that. Now for U and C. Both of those can be deciphered when you go to the house next to the helipad in the courtyard. Inside the VIP suite is an hourglass atop the desk, and if you rotate it, you can unscrew the hourglass itself, placing it into your inventory. Examining and tilting it will move the sand to the other side.
I didn't even notice this. Like, I found this hourglass and thought it was suspicious, but I did not even notice that you could tilt it and drain
And
the
if you
sand.
let it run for a bit, you'll find a hidden
And this is like such a tiny part of this puzzle.
message under the sand. U equals 380,000. This is the distance from Earth to the moon, in kilometers. U equals moon. We're halfway there. Proceed through the underground lab until you reach the control room. Immediately left of the door, you'll find the Grace Ashcroft blood analysis report on a desk. Read this file and scroll all the way down to find one line that's not like the others. C equals 4.2 LY. LY indicates light years, and 4.2 light years is the distance to the nearest star from Earth. C equals star in our DNA sequence, and that just leaves A. It turns out you don't actually need that part, but you won't know that without playing Leon's section at RPD. After confronting Mr. X, aka the Super Tyrant, you'll be able to explore the basketball court behind Kendo's gun shop. When you do, you'll see the head from the Toy Uncle bobblehead on the ground. Kick it through the fallen basketball hoop to trigger a sound cue, then head back into Kendo's shop. The rest of the Toy Uncle bobblehead is inside here, and now that you've kicked the head through the hoop, you'll be able to interact with it. You'll receive a message that says, just ignore A, and that's what we're going to do. We only need G, U, and C from the severed hand DNA sequence. Now it's time to put it all together. Whether you do this on another playthrough, or you do it right after scanning the severed hand is up to you. The important thing is having Marie's doll and Grace's inventory and carrying Emily with you. So, before heading outside to the Rhodes Hill courtyard, grab Emily and go to the lead researcher's office on the second floor of the East Wing. This is where you got the sun quartz from the safe earlier in the game. Once you scan the severed hand, you'll be able to interact with the safe again and enter a new code. Thanks to the DNA sequence, we know what that is. Ignoring the letter A and converting everything else to symbols, we get the following code. Sun, sun, star, sun, moon, star, sun, moon, sun, moon, star, moon. Punch this in to hear a creepy child's laugh. Remember, the sweet pair is Emily and Marie, and the creepy laugh is the voice. If you're carrying Emily and holding Marie's doll in your inventory, the final challenge will be complete once you all hear the laugh. Congrats.
So let me just say, I love this. I love that this is in the game. Like, this is so stupid. This is like beyond La Mulana levels of like unhinged riddle, like esoteric riddle, right? Like, I think this is probably harder than anything in La Mulana, and I have beaten La Mulana. I haven't done all the optional stuff, but yeah. I do have a lot of problems with it, and you know, the fact it is, I would never petition to have this taken out of the game or to not have this. I want this in every game. I want every game to, every like AAA game to have this just insane unhinged riddle sequence in it, right? But or this kind of thing, not this exact thing, obviously, but I do think it's a poor fit. The way that it fits in is not good for a couple of reasons, and one of those reasons being related to what I was saying earlier about, you know, having to kind of choose whether you're doing exploration gameplay or whether you're doing action gameplay, and how you behave, how you play, you know, deciding how to play accordingly. 'Cause like, well, it's not really action gameplay. It's just this is a different way in which you often in games have to decide like how to engage with the game. Like, it's not just, you can't just have this one philosophy that everything is like an arcade game and you're going to approach everything as if it's an arcade game and you're just going to look things up and you're just going to, you know, care about the repeat playthroughs and care about like finding all the exploits and playing optimally as if it were an arcade game, right? And just taking whatever metric of success like the game gives you. Like, you know, this game gives you a completion time at the end of the run, so arcade game players are kind of latching onto that as like what you're supposed to optimize. That's like the score for this game, right? Whereas like, you know, I think for a normal player like engaging with this game and just trying to enjoy it, that's much more like, okay, it's there because, you know, there's a speedrun challenge and that's part of the meta progression. That's, you know, the main way of enjoying the game. But anyway, you know, you have to realize if I had just let myself keep playing the game blind after I got to this puzzle, I would have had a horrible time, right? I would have had a horrible time. I'm glad that it's in the game, and I think it was obvious enough, at least for me, it was obvious enough that I wasn't supposed to engage with this blind, because of several decisions that they made, several design decisions that, like, this is clearly just not the type of game that supports crazy riddle, full, like, riddles that span the full game, right? Like, there is stuff from all different parts of the game that are relevant for solving this, and if you're trying to solve it blind, you're going to spend a lot of time, like, you're going to think of some idea, like, oh, maybe this thing from this Leon part of the game is going to be relevant to solving this, and then you're going to want to go to that part of the game to check on something or to try something and see if it works, and that's going to take a lot of time because the way they designed the saves in this game, you only have a limited number of save files. You have maybe like 10 save files or something. I don't know exactly, but it's pretty limited so that you can't just go anywhere at any given time. I don't think there's like a load to a specific chapter even or anything like that. Like, you're going to have to replay a lot of stuff to get to a particular point to check on something. And like, you know, watching the solution to this puzzle, like, might give you the impression that obviously it seems ridiculous just watching this, even if you have no idea about the game, but I think it can give the impression that solving the puzzle is actually a lot easier than it is. Like, it's because it doesn't show all the things, it doesn't show all the red herrings, right? It doesn't talk about all of the things that seem like they might be relevant. The first thing that you think of when you see the phrase, "let the sweet pear hear the voice," like, okay, this is how you naturally engage with the puzzle, right? If you're playing the game blind and you see this puzzle, "let the sweet pear hear the voice." Okay, so you're thinking about these two things. You're thinking about what these two things mean: sweet pear and voice. And that could mean like, it could mean like infinite things. Like the sweet pear. I mean, the first thing that comes to a lot of people's mind, the first thing that came to my mind was there's a pair of women, zombie women who are like singing, right? Because you're thinking voices and you're thinking about a pair, like two of something. There are exactly two of these women singing zombies in the game. And, you know, that might seem like it might be relevant, but, you know, it doesn't really make sense. I don't think it makes sense to actually like explore that possibility very much. But just think about like when you get the severed hand. Like, I got the severed hand and I didn't think to put it under the microscope. I mean, if I had really started thinking about it more seriously, like that would have been one of the things that I would have done at some point. But it's not immediately obvious that you need to put it under the microscope. You might try bringing it to Emily. You know, like I eventually realized that the sweet pear was Emily and Grace. No, not Emily and Grace. Wait, oh, you're saying you thought it was Emily and Grace, right? But it's actually Emily and Marie, which is the other girl. Yeah. So here's how I engaged with it. First I thought about the singer ladies a little bit, but then I realized, okay, it's probably sweet pear makes the most sense if it's Emily and her sister. I didn't know if she was called Marie, but I knew that the sister had transformed into the girl, the monster, and I knew that I had the severed hand that came from the monster. So I thought that by having that in my inventory and then carrying Emily somewhere, I would be able to do the thing, right? That's like not true at all. Like, even if I had figured out, well, first of all, you can't figure out what the voice is until after. You can't figure out what the voice in the riddle means until after you've figured out all this other crazy stuff, all the really hard parts of the puzzle. Like, it's almost as if the phrase that signals the existence of the puzzle, you know, "let the sweet pear hear the voice," that phrase is almost a giant red herring. It's almost like a double red herring, because it gets you thinking about what is the sweet pear, and it gets you thinking about the voice. But the way to actually start making progress on the puzzle has almost nothing to do with that. Like, you have to figure out this flushing thing, and you have to figure out this, which is just in like random files, and you have to figure out this like putting all the bodies into the processing thing and like waiting 15 minutes and all of this stuff. Like, that is how you actually get to the point where you can even know what the voice is, or even reasonably have a theory about what the voice is. So like, it's the whole puzzle is like backwards in this weird way. Like, it doesn't clue you in properly to it. You know, you could maybe start thinking about the severed hand because you're thinking about the sweet pear, and then that will lead you to the to this clue about like the sun and moon and all of this stuff, and you could potentially progress from there. But ultimately, you need this piece. The hardest piece of the puzzle to figure out is like the stupid toilet, which is like totally disconnected from everything else. I don't know. It's just bizarre. The way that the puzzle is like structured. Obviously, they didn't like. I don't think they're not really puzzle designers, right? Like. I'm guessing whoever designed this just like thought it was funny and was just going to make a crazy sequence and thought it was interesting to do that and wanted, likes community puzzles, and that's cool. Like, again, I like that this is in the game, but it is very like backwards in a way. And like, there's just been getting back to why I decided to look it up. There had just been enough stuff in the game that was a little bit unintuitive and unclearly signaled and not quite right. Like the stuff in the story, like the way that they signaled which ending you're supposed to choose in the story, I felt like was not delivered very well. And yeah, the thing with the save files, like I mentioned, like it would take a long time to like figure out to do a lot of this puzzle solving or like testing ideas and stuff. So because of that, I decided to try looking it up. But even then, here's a tip if you're going to try to engage with games well, like, if you're trying to play them blind and then you're thinking maybe it might make sense to look something up, but I'm not sure, you can always have you can pick someone else that who knows the game, or someone who can just look it up for you and whose judgment you trust, and get them. And this is what I did. I got Misa. I got Misa to look it up for me. And she was like, this seems completely outrageous. Like, you're never going to figure this out, or this is not a good use of time. And, so I stopped trying to figure it out. And I just watched the IGN video. And I think that was kind of the ideal experience. Right. But yeah, that can kind of be a middle ground, right? Between, instead of just switching from all the way from like the exploration blind mindset to the, I'm going to look everything up mindset all at once. Like, yeah, you can have someone else try to tell you, maybe they'll think, okay, you can probably figure this out, but maybe you need a hint for this one part, or maybe they can tell you like, I think you should try a little bit longer or whatever. Like, yeah, it's, like I said, it's tricky, and I understand why people would want to have a simpler, more static way of engaging with all games. But just I feel passionate about the fact that this type of gameplay gets overlooked by those types of people. Like, yeah, and it's just how it is, right? It's just how it is. Not every game is the same. Not every type of game is doing the same thing. And I mean, it's this, this is true of like other art forms as well. This is true of literature. Like, yeah, some books even have these crazy meta puzzles like this in them. But, some books are much more spoilable than others. Some books, like, it's good. You will have a better experience with them if you know certain things going in, and some are really best to go in completely blind. Some books are much better on the second read, once you understand everything that's going to happen, and others are much more about the surprise. Like a mystery story is much more about the surprise, whereas, a lot of great works of literature benefit from knowing everything that's going to be coming, and seeing how what happens at the beginning fits into this bigger picture, right? There's an art to that you appreciate more on future reads. But so yeah, I think if you want to, my general point here, my biggest thing is that if you want to engage properly with art in general, including in video games, you have to be willing to take different approaches to different things and judge different things by different standards, and think about different types of games, of art, different types of games in different ways. And that's what I feel like is missing from the Resident Evil 9 discussion that I've seen. The more to, and again, I enjoyed a lot of, I thought Mark's review was incisive as it often is, and insightful. And I agree with a lot of his points, but it also just misses this other thing that also matters a lot, and yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say. Is that all I had to say? Yeah. The other thing, I kind of got some hate for this on Twitter. I was saying, like, I was talking about how, like, people just have unreasonable expectations for, like, big budget games. Like, okay, if this game had a,
That's on solving Resident Evil.
oops. This game had a $50 million budget or something, right? You just can't make that budget back by appealing to my taste specifically, right? By making the best game. If you make the best game for me, that does not make $50 million or even close. It does not make $50,000 if you make the best game for me, because you're optimizing for me at the expense of everyone else. And the same is true to a lesser extent if you optimize for arcade, people who shared the Electric Underground's taste or whatever. Like, that is just not a big enough group to make that $50 million back. So this game just doesn't get made. Nothing remotely like this gets made if it's made for arcade players at the expense of everyone else. And games are expensive to make. You can't just spend a bunch of extra time on, like, difficulty. You could say, like, they should have higher difficulty levels that are designed more for the hardcore players. But, again, this is a mass market entertainment product. This is not high art. Resident Evil is not high art. It was much more artistic originally, right? When Mikami and when Kamiya were involved with the series, clearly, like, you can tell, like, Resident Evil 9 does not have the mood and the vibes and the you can just tell that there's a real artist behind in the gameplay as well. It's a little harder to explain why, but to pinpoint why, but there's new things happening. There's new interesting stuff being explored aesthetically and gameplay wise in, like, Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 4 and stuff. But that's just not how it is anymore. That's just not what this series is. That's just not what any series is after that long. Unless you're Ghosts and Goblins and you bring back the original guy and you make another game that alienates everyone and sells 0 copies in 2021 or whenever that game came out. Which, respect that Capcom did that as well. But that doesn't mean they're going to do that with Resident Evil, which is one of their biggest cash cows. Like, they want to remain in business. They want to keep making Resident Evil games because it makes a lot of their customers happy. And they are going to mainly put their money into their development time and effort into the stuff that is appreciated by their normal audience, not just some tiny subset of their audience that, you can tell that there's a disparity in how much effort they put into the first playthrough stuff and the normal mode stuff, the stuff that applies to everyone, versus the stuff that is, like, extra challenges for the hardcore players, like Insanity mode. They're not adding new types of enemies or new design patterns in Insanity mode. They're not making crazy challenges that take a ton of development time. Like, even this crazy puzzle, like, there's a little bit for that, and there's a little bit for Insanity mode as well. They, like, they changed some enemy spawns and stuff like that. But for the most part, the stuff that's going to be appreciated by a relatively small fraction of the players is stuff that's relatively low development effort. Like, we're just going to add a little flag. And add a challenge, like, did you use any healing items in this run? And if not, you get an achievement. Like, that's very low effort. And yeah, I think to expect a game like this that is an entertainment product to try to push the medium forward, or or like not even that, just like be hardcore and like be challenging in a particular way, and yeah, cater to some kind of like niche taste is just kind of ridiculous. So when I think about these games, I try to appreciate them when they manage to appeal to me to some degree, despite being what they are, right? Like, yeah. I'm not gonna say this is a slop game. It's like a well-made game in a lot of ways, but like it is kind of in the category of AAA slop, right? It's just not trying to be high art. So I think it makes much more sense to like you can say what you wish the game was, right? Like you can say, it's totally fair to say the stuff that like the arcade people are saying, like, you know, I would like the game better if XYZ, you know, if set pieces were more involved and more difficult, if, you know, the spawns weren't static in the Leon I didn't talk about the Leon section enough, by the way. I should maybe go back and talk about that a little bit more. But I don't know. The same stuff I said about Grace applies to the Leon section, just not quite as much. But it is interesting. Well, I'll get back to it, maybe. But yeah, you can say X, Y, and Z would make the game better for you, but at some point it crosses over into expecting that, or thinking it's realistic, or thinking that your criticism is helpful or changing what this game is going to be. Like, Capcom is happy that these people who only like arcade games are like talking about their game at all, right? They're happy for the buzz. They, you know, they appreciate that they're creating more buzz around the game. It doesn't even matter that it's negative. But yeah, going back to the Leon section, I'll actually, where was it? I just want to touch on this briefly because it does relate to what I was saying. Obviously, the Leon section is closer to being an action game. I was saying Resident Evil Requiem is not an action game, right? Obviously, the Leon section is closer to being a pure action game than the Grace section. But I think still it's a really missing a lot of the point to characterize it that way as the primary thing. Because it's kind of, I mean, the footage isn't really going to show this, right? But it's kind of more like a Metroidvania. It actually feels surprisingly like a 3D Metroidvania sometimes. You know, I'm talking about the big Leon section in particular. You know, this game has a lot of shorter segments that do different things and focus on different things, but those don't make up the bulk of the game, right? Oh man, I'm noticing the aim assist here. That's crazy. But you know, the bulk of the game is like the care center, and then this Leon thing, this big Leon section that we're in right now, where it's kind of, well, it's like a relatively dense space, and you're going around and searching for a few different things. There's different items you have to pick up, and there's items you have to pick up over here and then bring them over here and bring them back to somewhere that you've been before. You have to kind of do a little bit of backtracking, a little bit of like remembering where this particular thing was, and like understanding the map layout. You know, you come to understand this area, this relatively small area that's a little interconnected in certain ways. You have shortcuts that come back down to where you were before. All this stuff, like, it's very Metroidvania-ish, or like, you know, you could think Dark Souls 1 a little bit. It's, you know, you're not getting like upgrades like a Metroidvania, but in terms of how you think about the environment, it's like that. And that just, it's not my favorite type of exploration. It's weaker than games that totally focus on it heavy and like expect more from you, but it leaves room for you to do this kind of thinking that I'm talking about, this kind of engaging with the game and, you know, looking at everything that's happening, taking in your environment and thinking about it and predicting and anticipating what's going to happen. Like, you know, the stuff I was talking about Dark Souls, like enemies being around a corner and like traps and stuff like that. You know, this Leon section has a lot of that kind of thing. But even just in general, when you're walking through like normal areas that are going to have enemies in them, you want to be thinking about what gun should you have equipped right now? You know, do I want to be topped off? Is it worth topping off on health right now, even though it's going to kind of waste a little bit of this heal? You know, stuff like that. Like you are constantly anticipating what's going to be around the next corner, right? And and preparing yourself mentally to engage with that in the right way, like always being ready to switch to a grenade and throw it quickly if there's like a group of enemies that pops out of somewhere or whatever. Like it's about more than the action itself. It's about what happens before the action. It's about your expectations of the action. Yeah, stuff like that. It's about how you play a section in your head before you even know that it exists. It's kind of a silly way to say it, but it's something like that, right? And yeah, you know, Metroidvanias don't tend to have the most interesting like secrets or like, you know, optional things to find. It tends to be pretty obvious, you know, you kind of go through the game and you don't really have to use your brain that much. But 3D, first of all, you don't get many like Metroidvania-ish. You don't get this type of thing in 3D that often, as often as you do in 2D. But also, 3D makes it kind of more interesting automatically, or at least it gives a lot more possibilities for it to be interesting because there's verticality. You can look up and see something. You know, you can see, oh, there's this. There can be an overhang way ahead of you, and there can be an item hanging from that overhang, and the game can reward you for thinking, oh, there might be something up there. Like that would be a funny spot for the designer to place something, or that's something that's somewhere that an item could be hiding, right? And like, oh, there's this little courtyard over here that's like off to the side. Like that just doesn't, off to the side of this building, that you just don't have that third dimension like that in the same way in a Metroidvania, right? And yeah, they do a really good job with the hanging items that you can like shoot down from above and then go and find where you pick them up. They do a really good job of designing them so that the less obvious ones, well, yeah, the ones that are, there's some that are in genuinely like unintuitive spots where like it's not obvious that you can like jump out this window to get to this little garden, you know, or like grassy section to the side of a building, or it's not obvious that you can like go out of this broken building onto this scaffolding and climb up and around to this like different spot to like get this item. And so yeah, so you're rewarded for it makes some things like that it hides those things like the scaffolding and the possibility of getting into that little side area. It hides them well enough that you often have the experience of seeing the thing hanging there and shooting it down and then not knowing how to get there. And so you have to actually think about the layout of the space. And you know, I'm not gonna say it's ever actually hard to figure out how to get there, but you're rewarded for then thinking about like, okay, where is it most likely to be, like, and you know, a skilled explorer will be much more likely to go straight to the right spot and have that intuition. Okay, yeah, it could connect here and around that corner and up there. Like, yeah, that kind of stuff is cool. And also like, yeah, planning your route through the area, thinking about which direction to explore first. You know, like you might be down at the bottom of a building, but it's like a tall shaft type of room with like, you know, stairs going all the way up, and you can see above you that there are parts of this room that have items. You can see that there are items up there that you haven't gotten to yet. And so when you see something like that in a game like this, you should be thinking, okay, well, you should be like building out the map in your head, right? The map of this area, building out the part of the map that you haven't gotten to yet, and you should now understand like, okay, so there is going to be some way to get to that from somewhere that I haven't gotten to yet. And then when you get up to that place that connects to that area from above to get those items, you can have a smoother experience because you anticipated that and you remembered that, and then you can just go straight to the items first. Like instead of having a 50-50, like I truly have no idea which way to go from here, which way is progress and which way is going to be items or whatever, like which way I would want to go to first. Instead of that, you have pretty good odds of going straight to the item direction first and then the progress later, because you remember, yeah, something somewhere up around here, it should connect back down to those items. And so, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Like it is rewarding to think about this kind of stuff, even if the game doesn't punish you for not thinking about it. Yeah. And that's really the most you can hope for, right? From this type of game. Again, like it's a mass market product. They have to make the playthrough smooth for, maybe it's not the most you can hope for, because you can hope that someone like Itagaki or whoever will come along who's like a real artist, a Mikami or whatever, who like wants to make the game with lower difficulties to appeal to the more casual player, but they also want to do the hardcore crazy thing on the higher difficulty. So you can hope for that. But the most you can realistically expect from a game like Resident Evil Requiem is the game is not going to punish you, because that would feel bad for the low skill players, but it is going to reward you. It's going to reward you with a smoother experience and a more satisfying experience if you are more clued in to the game, to the environment, to the area that you're exploring and all of that stuff. Does that make sense? I think that pretty much covers it. I can't believe I forgot to talk about Leon's entire section. Animal Well's post game. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to Animal Well yet, but definitely want to play it. I'm surprised more people didn't show up for Resident Evil. Dead chat. In 2D animation, when an object is less shaded, so it's obviously going to be moving at some point. Yes. Yes, I do. And I guess I was thinking about that with Resident Evil. I was looking back at Resident Evil 1 to think about this kind of thing. This is totally okay. This is totally what I was just thinking, because I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, remake, long play. Yeah. So, well, where's the best place to show it? Like the place where it really stood out to me was this hallway where you can push the it should be before this. This hallway where you can push the tables should be like a little bit before this. Where is it? Oh, is it right there? No, it'd be before this. Brother. I'm trying to look at the... Oh yeah, it'd be a little bit before this. Okay. Okay, this, like here, there are... Wait, where's the other table? I thought there were two tables here. Anyway, like this table, there's multiple of these like cabinet things, and one of them just looks like the one that's clearly interactable, right? And similar story with like items that you can pick up from tables versus like, the just scenery that's not gameplay relevant. Like often in a game like Resident Evil 1, you can tell very easily which things are going to be interactable and which aren't. And it's kind of a good thing. You kind of want that, right? And, modern games have kind of addressed this issue with like the button prompt when you get close to the thing. but I find myself, first of all, maybe the button prompt is somehow actually like tackier than just making the thing look different, but also I find myself wanting to be able to see it from afar, and I find myself wondering like I guess other, in some games the items like glow, but often the glow is like intermittent, like, you know, every 5 seconds they're gonna shine really quickly, right? And yeah, I find myself wanting to like run through these environments relatively quickly and pick up all the items sometimes, and I find myself slowing down if I really want to be thorough, and, you know, looking at every corner individually and making sure the button prompt doesn't come up. And then sometimes the button prompts don't work that well and stuff, so like, yeah, the problem of figuring out what is interactable or pick upable in a modern AAA game has not been solved to my satisfaction, and part of the solution I think lies just in this, you know, just make the thing look different. Just make it look different. I assume that's what you're getting at. But yeah. I think that's it for the stream. Hope everyone's playing some good games. Hope I will play some good games this week. Hope I will finish Caramel Action. I'll probably go deep on Caramel Action whenever, you know, on stream. I'll do a full Caramel Action spectacular stream, and you know, record like a commentary of my run. And I mean, the run is only gonna be like 6 minutes long, but I'll record like a video explaining how to play the game. All the knowledge that I have figured out. I'm sure there's still quite a bit more to figure out about the game. There's actually a lot of subtle, weird stuff going on that I haven't totally figured out yet. But yeah, we'll share my knowledge after the 2-all, I think, and maybe I'll try to get that this week. Thanks, Raw. And yeah, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Ring Racers, is that the Sonic fan game? Yeah. Yeah, this looks interesting. I could see myself getting into that. Oh god, the volume. turn it down over here. I gotta just fix this.
Hang up your speakers because Dr. Robotnik and his enemies are going.
There's just like a lot of crazy tech and stuff, right?
Potential of rings to supercharge your vehicle across more than 200.
Yeah, a technical kart racer. Drawing inspiration from fighting games. I always thought it was interesting and kind of underexplored, like, you know, in F-Zero, when the other racers are like banging up against you and they just come, you know, someone just comes out of nowhere and just bumps you off the course if they just happen to try to pass you at the wrong time in F-Zero. That's just something that happens a lot. And I always thought that was kind of stupid about F-Zero, and I kind of prefer Wipeout to F-Zero for that reason, in part for that reason. But yeah, it does seem like there's interesting stuff that you could do with that if you design around it better. Honestly, I haven't gotten super deep into F-Zero. Like, I haven't even like looked into high level F-Zero, what that looks like. So maybe at a high level that works better than it does for like a casual playthrough, relatively casual playthrough. So I don't know, but yeah, I feel like if you leaned into that, I assume that's what I think when it says fighting games, but maybe it's not that at all. But yeah, that would be interesting. In any case, minimize randomness and emphasize player expression. See, this is kind of the opposite of what I like. This is a good encapsulation of what I don't like in games. But you know, these things can also, it's also context dependent. It's also context dependent, and what I've seen of this game, it does seem interesting. It is not a pick up and play experience. If you aren't already a racing fanatic, the learning curve will be quite steep. I mean, I admire that, but yeah, I guess the bad part of fighting games to me is the learning curve as well. You know, even though I'm not looking for pick up and play exactly, I'm also not looking for grinding tech necessarily. Like, I'm especially not looking for grinding tech to get to the fun part of the game. Like, I like a game that, like, sometimes like having crazy tech makes the game better for sure. But I like a game that can show you what is cool about it and motivate you to learn, you know, to get better at it. And part of that might involve practicing, you know, being in the lab, experimenting with stuff and combos, and yeah. Anyway, I should try this at some point, but it's probably not happening anytime soon. I'm also thinking about picking up Mugenics finally. So there goes 500 hours or whatever. Anyway, join the Discord. Sorry YouTube people, you will have to look at the stream and copy the link or whatever. But yeah, join the Discord if you want to talk throughout the week, and I'll be back next week. See ya later.